Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into one of the most intimate mysteries of all, the gentle, restless voice that lives inside your mind. The one that narrates your day, questions your choices, and sometimes speaks so loudly that you can't quite tell where thinking ends and you begin. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see the constellation of places we gather from, each glowing softly in its own little corner of time. Now feel free to dim the lights, let the room grow still, and notice the gentle rhythm of your breath, the quiet pulse that keeps you here, steady and alive. There's no need to focus too hard. If your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story of that voice within. Now listen to that voice in your head for a moment, the one reading along with me right now. It might be softly echoing these words, or it might be commenting quietly saying, "Yes, that's true," or "I already know this," or maybe even, "I wonder where he's going with this." It's curious, isn't it? The voice seems to belong to you. It uses your language, your memories, your personality. And yet, if you pay close attention, something remarkable appears. You can't predict what it will say next. Try it now, just for a moment. See if you can decide what your very next thought will be. What word will appear next inside your mind? You don't know, do you? It simply shows up, unannounced, uninvited, like a breeze moving through an open window. This tiny experiment reveals something profound. Thinking happens by itself. Just as your heart beats without being told to, or your lungs draw air in and out without a command, thoughts too seem to arise on their own. You don't push them into being, you witness them. Yet for most of our lives, we walk around believing, "I am doing the thinking." The truth may be gentler, that thinking is happening and you are aware of it, like someone listening to the rain but not creating the rain. When you look closely, the process of thought begins to resemble the weather. There are bright moments of clarity, storms of emotion, drizzles of doubt and sudden flashes of inspiration. But all of them pass. Each thought is a cloud taking shape for a moment, then dissolving back into the open sky of awareness. The voice in your head, for all its intensity, is not the sky. It is the movement within it, and yet, how naturally we identify with the clouds instead of the sky. From the time you learned to speak, that inner voice became your constant companion. It echoed the words of your parents and teachers. It remembered instructions, repeated lessons, built plans, made sense of the world. It told you who you were, your name, your history, your likes and dislikes. Over the years, it began to feel inseparable from you. After all, who would you be without it? But this assumption, that the voice is you, may be one of the most fascinating illusions of human experience. Because if the voice truly is you, then who is the one hearing it? Who's aware of these thoughts appearing and disappearing like ripples on the surface of a pond? Perhaps there's something deeper, a quiet listener behind the voice, a space in which thought unfolds. Imagine that space as a wide, still lake. On its surface, words and images form like tiny waves. Some are gentle, others chaotic, but all arise from the same depth and eventually fade back into it. You're not the individual wave that rises and falls. You're the lake itself, the silent capacity that allows every ripple to appear. This is not an idea to believe, it's something to feel. Even now, as you listen, thoughts may continue to move through your mind. Maybe they're evaluating what I'm saying or drifting toward tomorrow's plans. But beneath that current, something else remains utterly still, a subtle awareness that notices it all. That stillness has no voice, no opinion, no name. It is not bound by language. It was present before you learned to think, and it will be present long after a thought fades away. We could call that awareness consciousness, but names often shrink what they're meant to describe. It's more accurate to sense it than to define it. You can't see it directly because it's the one seeing. It's like the eye that looks but cannot look at itself, or like light trying to illuminate its own glow. That is the paradox at the heart of this exploration. The voice and the listener are not separate, and yet they seem to be. Still, we spend most of our lives chasing after the voice, defending its opinions, amplifying its worries, decorating it with achievements. It tells stories about the past and projections of the future, and we follow them as though they were the map of reality itself. But every now and then something interrupts the chatter. The sight of a sunset, a moment of laughter, a simple breath. In those instants the voice quiets, and what remains is presence. Vast, silent, and unmistakably alive. The paradox resolves itself for a heartbeat. The witness and the witnessed are one. That voice inside you isn't a villain to be silenced, nor a master to obey. It's more like a radio that never turns off, sometimes tuned to wisdom, sometimes to noise. You can listen without mistaking the sound for who you are, because beneath all the words there's something listening that doesn't need language at all. So, as we begin this slow journey together, let's carry a small question gently in our hands, not to answer, but to live with. Who is speaking in my head? You might find that the more closely you listen, the less you can tell where the voice ends and awareness begins. Perhaps that's the secret all along, that the voice is simply one way consciousness speaks to itself, whispering softly through the corridors of the mind. And as you sit here, listening, you don't need to do anything about it. Just notice the words, notice the silence between them, and let yourself rest in the quiet, knowing that you are the space in which all of this appears. The voice, the listener, the silence, the whole gentle theatre of thought. Have you ever noticed how thinking just happens? You don't have to decide to do it. You don't say to yourself, "Now, I'll think for a while." Thoughts appear as easily as breath moves in and out of your lungs. They rise, unfold and fade, sometimes in clear sentences, sometimes as a blur of impressions or memories. The mind hums along like a quiet machine that never shuts down, generating ideas, worries, stories, plans, all on its own. We're so used to this endless stream that we rarely pause to question how it begins at all. Try this simple experiment again if you like. Sit quietly and see if you can control what your next thought will be. Perhaps you expect it to be about something specific, the sound of my voice, what you'll do tomorrow, something you forgot to finish today. But as you wait, you realise something almost humorous. The thought appears before you can choose it. It springs into being like a spark. By the time you're aware of it, it's already there, complete. The thinker, it seems, arrives a heartbeat too late. The great mystery is that we don't notice this delay because we're so quick to claim ownership. A thought appears and we immediately say, "I thought that." But if thoughts simply arise, can we honestly say we're their author? You don't say, "I beat my heart," or "I digest my food," unless you're speaking metaphorically. These are functions of life itself, processes happening within you, not actions you perform. Perhaps thinking is no different. It's simply one of the ways life expresses itself, through mental movement instead of physical. The mind, in that sense, is like a small weather system that lives inside your skull, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, sometimes clouded, sometimes full of light. The weather doesn't need permission to form. It follows invisible patterns of heat, air and time. So too does thought. It's shaped by memory, emotion, habit and circumstance. Each one arises because the conditions are right and disappears when they change. You can observe it, but you can't stop it with willpower, any more than you could command the wind to still. This doesn't mean the mind is random, it has its rhythms. When you focus, it narrows its field like a lens tightening on a single subject. When you relax, it expands and begins to wander. The default mode of your brain, scientists sometimes call it the resting network, hums along when you're not engaged with the outer world, weaving stories about the past and future, building that continuous thread we call me. But you don't need to remember such terms or theories. It's enough to sense that the mind has its own tempo, just as breathing does, sometimes deep and slow, sometimes shallow and rapid. If we could see thoughts, they might look like currents of air moving through a vast landscape. You can't catch them, but you can feel them brush against your awareness. And just as you can't see the air but only what it moves, leaves, water, clouds, you can't see consciousness directly, only its movements, the thoughts, sensations, and feelings that drift through it. Imagine you're standing by the sea. Waves roll in, break, and vanish. Yet the water itself remains. You can't separate the wave from the ocean. It's one movement of the whole. Thinking is like that. Each thought is a ripple on the surface of consciousness. It rises, breaks, and returns to the same stillness from which it came. When you watch the mind in this way, without trying to force silence or chase meaning, you begin to see that awareness itself never changes. It's the background on which all change happens. Sometimes people worry that if they stop identifying with their thoughts, they'll become passive, empty, or detached. But the opposite tends to occur. When the chatter quiets, you don't lose depth, you gain clarity. The silence beneath thought is not blank. It's rich, spacious, and alive, like the pause between two musical notes that makes the melody possible. Without the silence, there could be no song. Without the stillness of awareness, thought would have no stage on which to appear. You might notice this naturally in moments of absorption, when you're painting, reading, gardening, or walking through the rain. There's no need to tell yourself what you're doing. The experience lives directly in you. The inner narrator takes a step back, and in that gap you feel more vividly alive. That's not the absence of thought. It's thought flowing without resistance, like breath moving freely through open lungs. You can practice this simply by observing the rhythm of your own mind. Notice how thoughts form, how they fade, how another replaces them. No need to label or analyze, only to notice. Just as a naturalist might sit quietly by a riverbank watching the life that moves there, you can watch the life that moves through your awareness. You might see patterns, worries repeating, memories looping, fragments of song, but you don't have to push them away. They are the sound of the mind doing what minds do. What changes isn't the thought itself, but your relationship to it. When you see a thought as a happening rather than as who you are, it loses its authority. You can listen without being swept away. You can think without being trapped in thinking. It's the difference between floating on the current and believing you are the current. And just as the breath continues, whether you pay attention to it or not, thought will continue. The goal is not to stop it. That would be like trying to hold your breath forever. The invitation is simply to see it for what it is. A rhythm of existence, neither friend nor foe, just another movement of life. You might begin to sense that beneath all the thinking, there's something that doesn't move. A quiet awareness that watches, unhurried. It's present before the first thought, and remains after the last one fades. That awareness isn't an idea to believe in, it's something you can feel even now. Listen between your thoughts. There's a space there, silent but awake. That's you. Not the voice, not the story, but the knowing itself. As you rest with that sense of knowing, the mind may still whisper, "I don't quite understand." That's fine. Understanding belongs to the level of thought. Awareness doesn't need to understand, it simply is. Just as the sea doesn't need to understand the wave to let it rise and fall, you don't need to understand thought to let it pass. So tonight, if your mind keeps moving, If it wanders or worries or revisits the day, don't struggle to stop it. Instead, listen to it like distant rain. Feel it come and go. And remember that thinking, like breathing, is part of being alive. It doesn't define you. It simply flows through the vastness of what you are. If you listen closely to that inner voice, you'll notice that it doesn't just describe the world, it describes you. It says things like, "I'm not good at that," or "I wish I were different," or "This is who I am." It carries an entire autobiography, written one thought at a time, as if it were the keeper of your identity. Every memory, every opinion, every feeling becomes part of a private narrative, the story of me. And it's an impressive story, really, full of details that no one else could know. Where you were born, who you've loved, what you've achieved, what you've lost. But here's the quiet twist. That voice doesn't simply tell your story, it creates it. It turns experience into a script and then convinces you that the script is who you are. From the time we were children, we were taught to organize our lives into a timeline. When I grow up, I'll be this. I'm the kind of person who likes that. And every moment after became a continuation of that imagined self. We learned to describe ourselves as if we were characters in a long-running play. We say, "I'm the one who's shy," or "I'm ambitious," or "I'm unlucky." These labels seem harmless, but over time, the mind builds walls around them, defending them as if they were the truth. The inner narrator becomes the director, the actor, and the critic of its own performance. Imagine watching a play for so long that you forget it's a performance at all. The costumes, the scenery, the dialogue. It all feels real. You laugh, you cry, you worry about what will happen next. But then, one night, something shifts. You look around and realize you're sitting in a theatre. The stage lights, the velvet curtains, the sound of the audience breathing beside you. It was there all along, but you'd forgotten. The story was never a prison. It was just a show. The same realization can dawn within you. The I that you've been defending so carefully, the one that needs to succeed, to be loved, to be right, might not be a solid thing. It might be a collection of passing thoughts stitched together by memory. If you search for that I, you'll find it's like trying to catch your own shadow. The closer you reach, the further it slips away. There's no single thought or feeling that stays the same long enough to be you. The body changes, the mind changes, emotions come and go. What remains constant isn't a personality. It's the quiet awareness watching all of it unfold. Think of it like an actor who becomes so immersed in a role that they forget their real name. For a time, they are the character. Their heartbeat quickens when the character is in danger. They cry when the character suffers. They celebrate when the character wins. But the actor was there before the curtain rose and remains after the final line. In the same way, awareness was there before your story began and will remain after every thought and identity has faded. This idea can feel unsettling at first. We cling to the story because it feels familiar. We've spent a lifetime adding chapters, polishing certain scenes, editing out others. To question it can feel like erasing ourselves. But what if it's the opposite? What if the story is the mask, and what you truly are is the space beneath it? Vast, alive, unconfined. Picture a mirror. Every morning it shows you a face and you say, "That's me." But the mirror doesn't keep the image when you walk away. It reflects what's in front of it, and then it returns to clarity. In the same way, consciousness reflects thoughts, emotions, and sensations, but it doesn't hold on to them. They come and go. The mirror remains untouched. The mistake is not in having reflections. It's in believing that the reflection is the mirror itself. You can sense this for yourself in quiet moments. When you're not busy being someone, when the mind relaxes its grip on identity, a subtle lightness appears. The tension that comes from defending the story softens. You don't have to be anything for a moment. Not successful, not kind, not spiritual, not clever. just present. In that presence, life feels simple again. It's not that the self is wrong or bad. The story of you is useful. It helps you navigate the world, pay bills, remember names, and build relationships. The problem begins when we forget that it's a story, when we mistake the map for the territory. The map is practical, but it's not the landscape. The moment you confuse the two, you start living inside a description instead of reality. Consider how the inner narrator constantly updates its plot. I did well today. I failed. I'm getting older. I'm changing. Each thought feels meaningful, but together they weave a fiction, a pattern of words that replaces direct experience. The truth is that life happens before the mind describes it. You see before you say, I see. You feel before you say, I feel. The commentary always comes a fraction too late. When you start noticing this, something beautiful happens. You begin to sense gaps between the story and the moment itself. Those small pauses are freedom, tiny cracks through which presence shines. You don't need to destroy the story, you only need to see it clearly. Then, even as the narrator continues to speak, you'll hear another sound beneath it, silence. A stillness that doesn't belong to any character, a quiet awareness that has no name. Every culture gives this silent awareness a different name. Some call it the soul, others call it consciousness, or the witness, or simply presence. But whatever word you use, it points to the same mystery. The part of you that cannot be turned into an object, that cannot be fully captured by the voice in your head. It's not something you can find because it's what's doing the finding. When you start to see this, life becomes a little lighter. The mistakes of the past lose some of their weight. The anxieties of the future soften. You realize you've been carrying an entire fictional self around, and you can finally set it down even if just for a breath. The world doesn't collapse when you stop believing every line of your story. In fact, it expands. Colours grow more vivid, sounds more tender, as if reality itself was waiting behind the curtain, ready to be noticed once the narrator fell silent. And in that silence, there's no need to decide who you are. The story of you will keep unfolding, but you no longer have to be trapped inside it. You can listen to it the way you might listen to a bedtime tale, interested, perhaps even moved, but always aware that it's just words floating in the night air. Behind them, something deeper remains awake, the listener, not the story. If the voice in your head is not quite you, then what, or who, is it that hears it? When you notice a thought arise, there's something behind it that's aware of its arrival. When a feeling stirs, there's something quietly sensing that feeling. That something never shouts or demands attention. It doesn't argue. It doesn't judge. It simply observes. You might call it awareness, consciousness, or presence, but words only circle around what it really is. You can't see it the way you see a shape or a colour. You can't measure it, because it's the very thing doing the measuring. It's the witness, always here, always still, like the sky that holds every kind of weather without ever being touched by it. Let's look at this together for a moment. Close your eyes if you'd like. Thoughts are passing by. Little flashes of memory, small echoes of your day. You might sense emotions, subtle sensations in your body, the feeling of breath moving in and out. All of these change moment by moment, but the noticing itself, the quiet sense of I am aware, doesn't change. It's the background that remains the same while everything else moves across it. Even if your mind is restless, something underneath it is perfectly still, simply watching the movement. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein once wrote, "The eye that sees is not itself in the field of vision." It's a simple line, yet it captures the heart of this mystery. You can see many things, but you can't see the seeing itself. You can look at your reflection in a mirror, but you can't step outside your own awareness to view it from a distance. The one who looks can't be looked at, because it is the very act of looking. For centuries, Mystics and philosophers have pointed to this same paradox using different languages. In Sanskrit, the ancient word for this pure witnessing is sakshi, the silent observer that is aware of thoughts, sensations and experiences, yet remains untouched by them. The sakshi is not another thought. It doesn't arrive or depart. It is the field in which every thought blooms and fades. And though it has been called by many names, soul, consciousness, awareness, each term is only a finger pointing toward the same moon. The truth itself is not in the finger, but in what it points to. Imagine sitting beside a quiet river. The water flows endlessly, rippling and changing shape, carrying leaves, reflections, bits of light. Every moment is different, yet the riverbed beneath remains steady. Awareness is that riverbed, unseen, but supporting the whole flow. The mind, like the water, is full of movement, and the mistake we make is believing that we are the flow rather than the depth that holds it. In the modern world, we often hear that consciousness is something the brain produces, as if neurons were tiny factories generating awareness. But this explanation can feel a bit upside down when you really think about it. It's like saying a television creates the show it's playing. The television translates invisible waves into sound and colour, but the program itself comes from somewhere else. In the same way, perhaps the brain is not the maker of consciousness, but the instrument through which consciousness expresses itself, the receiver that tunes into the broadcast of life. You don't need to believe this as a theory, you can feel it as a possibility. When the mind grows quiet, awareness doesn't disappear, it becomes more vivid. Think of moments when the voice in your head falls silent, watching the sea at sunset, hearing a child laugh, touching the hand of someone you love. In those moments, you are more awake, not less. Thought is gone, but awareness is radiant, clear, fully alive. That alone should make us pause and wonder. If consciousness were merely a byproduct of thinking, shouldn't it fade when thoughts do? And yet it doesn't. The silence behind the noise is what allows the noise to be heard at all. There's another way to approach this. Imagine walking through a museum filled with mirrors. Every mirror reflects the world differently, curved, coloured, tilted. But the light that fills them is the same. Your awareness is that light. The reflections are your thoughts, emotions, memories, endlessly varied, sometimes beautiful, sometimes distorted, but all lit by the same source. When you identify with the reflections, life feels unstable, always shifting. When you notice the light itself, everything suddenly becomes simple. The reflections still appear, but they lose their power to frighten or define you. This understanding is not meant to make you retreat from life. It doesn't mean you should stop thinking, feeling, or caring. It simply means you begin to see what you are in addition to the noise of your inner dialogue. You're not only the voice that speaks, you're also the silence that hears. You're not only the waves that rise and fall, you're also the ocean that holds them all. Sometimes when people first begin to sense this inner stillness, they describe it as distant or impersonal. It feels almost too quiet, too empty. But stay with it a little longer and you'll notice that this silence is not cold. It has a warmth to it, a kind of effortless compassion. It accepts everything, every mood, every thought, every breath, without resistance. It doesn't need you to be different from how you are. That's why great teachers in every tradition describe this awareness as peace. Not peace that depends on calm circumstances, but peace that remains even in chaos. The sky doesn't stop being the sky when a storm passes through. It just waits, quietly, until the clouds part again. You don't need to search for this awareness or travel anywhere to find it. It's what's hearing these words right now. The one who's aware of your breath, of the sound in the room, of the thoughts still moving softly behind those sounds. That's it. And it's closer than close because it's not separate from you at all. You can't lose it because you never had it to begin with. You've only been distracted from noticing. Sometimes the simplest truths are the hardest to believe because they're not dramatic. Awareness doesn't flash or shout. It doesn't declare itself. It just quietly watches, patient and still, waiting for you to recognize it. And once you do, even for a moment, something relaxes. The need to control, to explain, to define, it all softens, like a muscle unclenching after a long time. You realize you don't need to find the observer. You've been it all along. And perhaps that's why so many traditions from Zen to Vedanta end not in complicated theories but in silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full, vibrant and awake. The kind of silence that has been listening since before you began to wonder who was listening. For most of human history, we assumed the brain was like a factory, a complex machine producing thoughts, dreams and awareness the way a furnace produces heat. It seems logical. Damage the machine and its functions change. But there's another way to see it, a softer, more spacious metaphor. Imagine instead that the brain is not a factory but a receiver, a beautifully tuned instrument that translates a signal into form. The signal, consciousness itself, is invisible, silent, everywhere. The brain shapes it into words, colours, memories and sensations, just as a radio translates unseen waves into music. The radio doesn't create the music, it only reveals it. Perhaps the same is true for us. You can feel this intuitively when you pause for a moment. The world doesn't vanish when you close your eyes, it simply rearranges itself. Sounds replace shapes, sensations replace colours. Awareness stays. You don't create that awareness. It's already here, steady and alive beneath the changing contents of experience. The brain may adjust the frequency, waking, dreaming, imagining, but the signal never really stops. Consciousness hums quietly in the background of everything. It can be helpful to remember that our instruments of perception, remarkable as they are, capture only a sliver of reality. Your eyes see a narrow band of light, your ears hear a small slice of vibration, your nose detects a handful of scents among millions. Yet even within these limits, life feels immense. What if consciousness too is a vast spectrum, and the human mind is tuned to one thin channel of it? Sometimes, in moments of stillness, that channel widens, and we glimpse something larger, a quiet sense of belonging to a vast field of awareness that holds us all. The ancient philosophers of India spoke of this long before neuroscience existed. They called it Brahman, the fundamental ground of being. Everything arises from it, exists within it, and returns to it. When it expresses itself through an individual life, they called that expression Atman, the inner self. Brahman is like the ocean. Atman is like a wave. Each wave is unique in shape and rhythm, yet made of the same water. You and I, seen from this perspective, are not isolated minds trapped in separate skulls. We are waves moving within one vast sea of consciousness. The brain shapes the wave, but the ocean provides its substance. If this sounds poetic rather than scientific, that's all right. Science and poetry often meet in the same space of wonder. Many modern researchers describe consciousness in surprisingly similar ways, not as a product of the brain, but as a network of integration, a field that lights up when information flows freely. They speak of connectivity, resonance, coherence, words that, if you listen to them slowly, sound almost musical. The melody is different, but the theme is the same. Awareness isn't made by one part alone, it's the harmony of the whole. Think of an orchestra. No single instrument produces the entire symphony. The beauty comes from coordination, from countless notes weaving together into something larger than any musician. The brain too may work in harmony with something beyond itself, an unseen conductor guiding the rhythm of thought, emotion, and perception. You can't point to the conductor, but you can feel its presence when the music flows effortlessly. Moments of stillness often reveal this harmony most clearly. When you watch a sunset, for example, and your inner voice finally pauses, what's left isn't emptiness, it's fullness, colour, light, the sound of the wind, the heartbeat in your chest, all merging into one seamless experience. There's no you standing apart from it, analysing or labelling. There's only awareness experiencing itself as beauty. For a breath, the receiver and the signal are one. The beauty of this view is that it doesn't divide the spiritual and the physical. It sees them as two sides of the same coin. The brain is miraculous, yes. Billions of neurons, a living network more intricate than any galaxy we know. But its complexity is only meaningful because of the awareness that illuminates it. Without that awareness, the most perfect brain would be a silent instrument, like a harp with no hand to play it. You don't need to hold on to this as a belief. It's more like a shift in perspective, a way of looking that opens rather than closes. When you see yourself as a receiver rather than a producer, life becomes lighter. You realize that thoughts, insights, and inspirations are not possessions. They are arrivals. They visit. They play through you, and they move on. Even creativity begins to feel less like effort and more like listening. The artist doesn't force the masterpiece. They tune themselves to the current and let it move through them. This is true not only for art, but for living. When you trust that awareness flows through everything, you stop gripping so tightly. You allow moments to unfold. You breathe more easily because you're no longer trying to make the universe happen. You're participating in its unfolding. You become, in a sense, transparent, a clear window through which life sees itself. It's said that the deepest wisdom often sounds simple. Consciousness is not something you have, but what you are. You don't possess awareness the way you possess objects. Awareness is the space in which possessing and letting go both occur. When you look for it, you can't find it, because it's the one doing the looking, and yet, without it, nothing could ever be found. Try feeling that now. Let your attention rest not on what you're hearing, but on the hearing itself. The soft awareness that recognizes sound, that's consciousness. It doesn't speak or think, it simply receives. Notice how effortless that is. You don't need to strain to be aware, it's happening by itself. Even when your mind wanders, awareness remains, like the quiet signal of a star still shining behind clouds. You might sense that awareness doesn't end at the edges of your skin. It extends outward, touching everything your senses perceive. The room you're in, the faint hum of distant life, the vast space of night, all of it arising in one shared field of knowing. There's no boundary line where you stop and the universe begins. There's only continuity, a seamless dance of energy and presence. When you begin to feel this, even faintly, the world takes on a different texture. You stop being just a thinker inside a head and start being part of a living field that includes everything. Every heartbeat, every gust of wind, every flicker of starlight. The boundaries soften. The radio, the signal, the song, all are one. And that simple recognition that you're both the listener and the music can be one of the most peaceful realizations of all. The voice in your head doesn't just sound like you, it speaks your language. Every word it uses, every turn of phrase, every quiet comment carries the accent of your childhood, the tone of the people who first taught you how to speak. When you think about it, that's remarkable. Your inner voice, the one that feels most private, is actually built from the voices of others. It began as sound in the air, your parents guiding your first steps, your teachers explaining the world, your friends laughing beside you. Their words sank deep, and somewhere along the way you began repeating them to yourself. What once was dialogue became inner speech. You learned to talk inside. You can almost picture it. A child sitting on the floor trying to tie their shoes, whispering to themselves, over, under, through the loop. At first, the words are spoken aloud. Then slowly they move inward. The voice becomes internal, and the instructions become habits. The child no longer needs to speak them. The body just remembers. In that quiet transition from outer speech to inner speech, something astonishing happens. The outside world moves in. The voices of our families, our schools, our cultures take root, until what we call me thinking is really a kind of chorus, a blend of countless voices layered into one. The Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky once observed that this is how inner speech is born, from the conversations we have with others. It's the echo of dialogue internalized, condensed, and reshaped until it becomes thought. You don't need to know his name or theory to recognize how true that feels. You can hear it in your own mind. The advice that sounds like a parent, the self-criticism that sounds like a teacher, the encouragement that sounds like a friend, they're all still in there, speaking through you. And it isn't only individual people who live in that inner space. Entire cultures echo through the way we think. A person raised in the modern West might find their inner monologues analytical, self-focused, narrating life as a story of individual choice, a single protagonist in a vast and separate world. But someone raised in a culture that values community might hear a different voice, one that speaks in relationships and responsibilities, that feels woven into the fabric of others. Neither is more correct. They are simply different languages of the mind, different ways consciousness has learned to describe itself. Even history has shaped the way our inner speech sounds. The ancient Greeks, for example, didn't have the same concept of an inner conscience that we do today. They often described their guidance as coming from outside, a god or a muse whispering in their ear. Athena told me to spare this man, a warrior might say. Today, someone in the same situation might say, my conscience told me. The voice hasn't changed its function, only its costume. What once was divine became psychological. What once was heard as a message from the heavens is now heard as a thought within. And this raises a delicate question. If our inner voice is shaped by the voices of others, then how much of what we call my thoughts is truly ours? When you feel that quiet inner critic scolding you, whose tone does it carry? When you hear an inner cheerleader urging you forward, whose encouragement does it echo? Perhaps they all belong to a long line of voices that helped you learn how to live, but that doesn't mean they all still serve you now. You can begin to listen differently. The next time your mind starts speaking, notice its language. Notice whether it sounds like a kind mentor or a harsh judge, whether it speaks in absolutes or possibilities. Ask softly, whose voice is this? Not to assign blame, but to recognize inheritance. Every thought has an ancestry. Every pattern of speech within you began as someone's word, spoken once, then repeated until it became part of your mind's grammar. There's something strangely freeing about realizing this. You start to hear your inner dialogue less as a sacred truth, and more as a collection of old recordings, some helpful, some outdated. You don't need to fight them or erase them. You simply begin to see them as what they are. Echoes. They arise, they play their tune, and then they fade. You can listen, you can learn, but you no longer have to obey every note. This is what the Buddhist traditions call non-attachment to thought. It doesn't mean pushing thoughts away or suppressing them. It means recognizing that you are not obligated to believe everything your mind says. Just because a thought appears doesn't make it true, important, or even relevant. It might be an old habit, a fragment of culture, a voice repeating itself out of momentum. Once you see that, thoughts begin to lose their grip. They pass through you like clouds through an open sky. Imagine sitting under that sky. Thoughts drift by, each one shaped by the air that formed it. Childhood lessons, social expectations, fears, hopes, borrowed phrases. You watch them float and change shape. You don't have to chase them or stop them. You just watch, knowing that the sky, your awareness, is vast enough to hold them all. The clouds don't stain the sky, and the thoughts don't stain consciousness. The sky doesn't argue with the wind, and you don't need to argue with your mind. You can simply let it be. When you start listening this way, your relationship with your inner voice changes completely. The chatter becomes softer, less personal. The judgments lose some of their weight. Even difficult thoughts begin to sound like old friends repeating stories you've heard 1,000 times before. You smile, you nod, and you let them talk. Then, when they've said their piece, you return to the quiet beneath them, the steady hum of presence. There's a kind of compassion that grows from this. You realize that everyone you meet carries their own chorus too, their own collection of voices shaped by parents, teachers, and histories. The angry driver, the anxious co-worker, the kind stranger, all are living inside their own symphony of inherited thought. When you see that, it becomes easier to forgive, easier to understand, because in a way, we're all songs being sung by the same universe, using different melodies and words. The next time you catch your mind whispering something harsh or fearful, pause for a breath and ask, is this really my voice, or just one I've been carrying? That question alone can open a door to freedom. The old recordings may keep playing for a while, but you'll hear them differently. They're no longer your masters, they're background music. You can listen, appreciate, and move on. And eventually, through that gentle listening, something quieter begins to emerge. A note that doesn't belong to the chorus at all. A silence between the words, a stillness that's not borrowed from anyone. It feels like peace, but more intimate than peace. It feels like home. If you sit quietly for a few moments, you might start to notice something that usually hides in plain sight. The small, delicate pauses between thoughts. They're so brief that the mind often rushes past them, eager to fill the space with another word, another image, another concern. But those gaps are real, and they're precious. They are the open sky between the clouds, the soft hush between notes of a song. If you learn to rest there, even for a heartbeat, you begin to sense something extraordinary, the silence that holds everything together. Let's try it right now. Gently. Don't try to stop your thoughts. Just sit back inside your awareness and watch them come and go. A thought rises, perhaps about something you did today, then another, maybe about tomorrow. But between them there's a brief, natural stillness. It's not something you create, it's something that's already there. Most people never notice it because they're too busy chasing the next thought. But if you linger, if you pause where the mind usually rushes forward, you begin to feel a subtle, living quietness, the awareness that remains when everything else settles. In this space, there's no narration, no judgment, no voice deciding what's good or bad. There's only knowing, a gentle, wordless recognition of being. You might call it consciousness, but it feels more like still water than a concept. The Buddhists speak of bare attention, which means seeing without naming, feeling without measuring. It's not an absence of thought. It's an openness that allows everything to appear without clinging to it. Imagine you're sitting by a pond on a calm evening. The surface is so smooth that you can see the reflection of the moon. Each time a thought arises, it's like a ripple disturbing that reflection. You don't need to stop the ripple. It will fade on its own if you don't keep stirring the water. The moment you stop trying to control the pond, its stillness returns naturally. The same is true for the mind. Stillness is not something you have to build. It's what remains when you stop struggling with your own thoughts. You can feel this even in everyday life. Think about the instant before you answer someone's question, before you open your mouth to speak. There's a quiet interval, a moment of listening, of gathering. Or the instant after laughter, when everyone in the room exhales and for a second no one says anything. In those microseconds, life is wide open. You're not caught in thinking, you're simply here. Those are glimpses of what awareness feels like without words. When people begin to notice these gaps, they sometimes describe them as nothing, as if awareness itself were a blank. But if you stay with that nothing, it starts to reveal itself as everything. Inside that silence, sounds seem clearer, colours softer, sensations more vivid. Awareness doesn't erase the world, it deepens it. It's like realising that the pauses between heartbeats are just as essential as the beats themselves. Without space, rhythm could not exist, and something else happens as you rest in that quiet. Thoughts begin to lose their edge. They don't vanish, but they no longer demand obedience. They float, light and harmless, like leaves drifting downstream. You can watch them without being pulled under. This is the beginning of freedom, not the absence of thought, but the ability to see thought as movement rather than identity. Many meditation traditions use this discovery as their foundation. They teach not concentration in the sense of effort, but awareness in the sense of ease, just noticing. When a thought arises, notice it. When it fades, notice that too. Over time, the noticing itself begins to feel more real than the thought. You realize you are the awareness in which thoughts happen, not the thinker they claim to belong to. Neuroscientists studying meditation have found that when people practice this kind of open awareness, the areas of the brain tied to self-storytelling and judgment grow quieter, while regions linked to sensory presence and compassion become more active. You don't need to know the details or the names of those regions. It's enough to understand that the mind, when it relaxes, reorganizes itself around peace. The quiet changes everything, not through force, but through allowing. Sometimes this awareness can feel impersonal, like you're stepping back from your life. But if you look closely, it's anything but cold. It's vast, but also tender. The silence doesn't judge what passes through it. It welcomes everything. Joy, sorrow, restlessness, laughter, and lets each arise and dissolve in its own time. It's the kind of kindness that doesn't need words. The sky doesn't decide which clouds to accept. It accepts them all. You might notice this softness appearing in your daily life without even trying. The next time someone speaks harshly to you, you may feel a pause before reacting. A moment of clear seeing that whispers, "You don't have to join this storm." Or when you make a mistake, instead of spiraling into self-criticism, you might find yourself smiling slightly, realizing the thought, "I messed up" is just another cloud passing by. Awareness doesn't deny emotion. It holds it gently, like a parent holding a child who has just fallen. The beauty of this practice is that it requires no special posture, no ritual. You can rest in awareness anywhere, on a bus, in a kitchen, lying awake at night. All it asks is that you notice the space between thoughts and trust that the silence you find there is not emptiness but presence. And that presence has always been there, waiting. In those moments of noticing, you begin to see that awareness doesn't belong to you. You belong to it. The quiet witness behind your thoughts isn't something personal or private. It's the same feel that every being experiences when they become still. It's the common ground of consciousness, the great space in which all our lives unfold. So the next time your mind feels too full, too loud, try not to chase silence. Just listen for it, not as something to create, but as something already here. Every breath ends with a small pause before the next begins. Every thought has a tiny space before another takes its place. Those spaces are gateways. Step gently through them, and you may discover a peace that has been here all along, softly watching, patiently waiting for you to notice. There's a simple truth that almost feels too easy to be real. You don't have to silence the mind to find peace. You only have to stop believing that every thought deserves your attention. The voice in your head will keep talking. It's what minds do. But peace lives underneath it, like the quiet sea below restless waves. When you stop trying to control or fix every ripple, the water settles on its own. Imagine again that wide blue sky stretching endlessly above you. Clouds pass through it, some soft and white, others heavy and grey. Sometimes the entire sky seems covered, and you forget that there's anything beyond the clouds at all. But even on the stormiest days, the sky is still there, unbroken, untouched by the weather. The clouds never stain it, they only drift across its surface. Thoughts are just like those clouds. They fill the space of your awareness, and sometimes they hide it completely, but they never destroy it. The sky doesn't have to fight the clouds to remain the sky. It only has to remain open. When you look at the world through that openness, everything feels softer. A worry doesn't have the same weight. A memory doesn't pull you under quite so deeply. You begin to understand that your thoughts are not enemies to defeat, but weather to observe, natural, temporary, passing. The moment you stop taking them personally, their power fades, like thunder moving off into the distance. Science gives us a gentle echo of this truth. When people practice letting go of constant mental chatter through meditation, mindful breathing, or simply pausing, certain areas of the brain known for self-referential thought become quieter. Other regions related to awareness and empathy start to glow more brightly. In simpler words, when the brain storyteller relaxes, the world itself seems to come alive. You hear more, see more, feel more. Awareness opens like a window that was always there but covered in fog. But don't worry, you don't have to meditate like a monk to experience this. It can happen in the smallest, most ordinary moments. Maybe you're washing dishes, and for a few seconds you stop thinking about the next task. You just feel the warm water on your hands, the rhythm of movement, the faint sound of clinking plates. In that instant, thought pauses and something quietly shines through. You're aware without effort. You're here without needing to be someone in particular. That's the peace behind the clouds. Not dramatic, not distant, just quietly present in the most ordinary things. The mind often resists this simplicity. It wants to be doing, fixing, achieving. It whispers, "Surely peace can't be this easy." But the truth doesn't need to be complicated to be profound. The deeper laws of life are often the gentlest ones. The heart beats, the sun rises, the breath moves in and out, all without us commanding them to. Why should peace be any different? It's not something you have to build. It's something you stop obscuring. Imagine a glass of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, it never clears. But if you set it down, even for a moment, the sediment begins to settle. The water clears itself. The same is true for the mind. Each time you pause and let a thought pass without following it, the water settles a little more. Clarity returns not through effort but through stillness. This clarity changes how you move through life. When the mind quiets, perception becomes simple again. The world seems brighter, not because it has changed, but because you've stopped filtering it through constant commentary. You start noticing small miracles. The sound of rain tapping softly on a window, the scent of bread baking, the warmth of sunlight on your skin. You realize that peace was never missing. It was simply waiting beneath the noise. There's a tenderness that comes with this discovery. You stop fighting with yourself. You stop demanding perfection from every thought or emotion. Instead, you begin to trust that awareness itself is enough, that even in moments of confusion or sadness, something in you remains whole. It's the same wholeness that a stormy sky still holds behind its clouds. You don't need to chase it. You just need to remember it's there. Sometimes people worry that if they stop identifying with their thoughts, they'll lose their drive, their creativity, or their passion. But the opposite is true. When thought becomes quieter, creativity doesn't die. It breathes. You no longer push ideas, you listen for them. Insight begins to feel less like a chase and more like a gift, something that arrives naturally when space is made for it. Peace doesn't dull you, it refines you. It turns effort into flow. And perhaps most beautifully, when you live from that peaceful space, compassion becomes effortless. You see other people struggling with their storms and realize they too are covered in clouds. They may not know the sky is still there, but you do. You begin to meet their anger or sadness, not with defense, but with understanding. The way the ocean accepts every wave without complaint. You stop needing to win arguments or prove yourself, because you sense the deeper truth. Beneath all our stories, we share the same sky. The more you rest in this awareness, the more natural it becomes. At first, you may need to remind yourself to look beyond the clouds. Over time, you won't need to remember. You'll feel it, the stillness beneath thought, the open expanse behind feeling. You'll begin to live from that place instead of looking for it. And once you do, life takes on a kind of gentle transparency. You move, work, speak, laugh, just as before. But the background hum of worry fades. The wind of thought still blows, but you're no longer swept away. You're the open sky, watching it all unfold. Tonight, if your thoughts seem restless, try this simple practice. Don't fight them, don't chase them away, just imagine yourself as that vast sky. Let the clouds come and go, the winds rise and fall. Feel the quiet space that holds it all together, the awareness that doesn't move. That stillness is your truest home, the peace that's been here all along, waiting behind the clouds. For most of your life, you've probably been told to use your mind, to think carefully, to plan ahead, to reason your way through every challenge. And that advice isn't wrong. Thinking is one of the most extraordinary abilities we have. It's the tool that built cities, cured diseases, wrote poems, and dreamed of the stars. The problem only begins when the tool forgets it's a tool, when thought, meant to serve, begins to rule. Imagine a craftsman who falls in love with his hammer. At first, it's just an instrument, but soon he starts using it for everything. Stirring his tea, brushing his hair, opening doors. You can picture the scene. Clumsy, a little funny, maybe even dangerous. That's what it's like when we try to live every moment through thinking. Thought is perfect for certain tasks. Measuring, comparing, designing. But it's not meant for every part of living. Some things require a different kind of intelligence. The knowing that comes through direct experience, through the body, through presence. There's an old saying, trying to stop thought with thought is like trying to smooth ripples on a pond with your hand. The more you stir, the more waves you create. It's the same with the mind. When you use thinking to fight thinking, you only add to the noise. But when you stop struggling, when you allow the ripples to fade on their own, the surface becomes calm. Clarity returns by itself. Think for a moment about all the times thought has served you beautifully. Solving a problem at work, remembering a recipe, writing a message to someone you love. Thinking is a magnificent servant in those moments. But notice also the times when it turns into a restless master, replaying old arguments, inventing future fears, commenting on every breath you take. The same instrument that builds can also trap. The key is not to abandon it, but to see it clearly, to use it when it's needed and to rest when it's not. There's another kind of knowing that lives in you, quieter and older than thought. You can sense it when you move your hand to catch a falling cup before you even think, or when you walk without planning each step. The dancer doesn't analyze every motion. The surfer doesn't calculate each wave. Their intelligence is embodied, spontaneous, flowing, wordless. It's as if life itself is thinking through them. When the mind relaxes its grip, something deeper takes over, a rhythm that doesn't need to be managed. You can see this in small, ordinary ways. A pianist who knows the piece so well that their fingers move before thought arrives. A chef slicing vegetables with such ease that the movement becomes a kind of meditation. A gardener who feels the soil and simply knows where to plant. These are not moments of dullness. They're moments of perfect clarity where awareness and action become one. We often call this state flow, but you don't have to name it. You felt it many times, those moments when time disappears, when effort falls away, when everything seems to move by itself. The mind is still there, but it's quiet, aligned, tuned to the moment like an instrument in harmony. There's a gentle science behind this too, though we can speak of it in simple words. When people enter this state of flow, the parts of the brain that constantly narrate, compare and judge become quieter. Other areas, the ones linked to focus and coordination, take the lead. It's as if the orchestra of the mind shifts conductors. The storyteller steps aside and the musician takes over. You could say the mind stops thinking about life and starts being life. It's not something you can force. The very act of striving pulls you out of it. Flow arises when the mind stops grasping and the body trusts its own intelligence. It's what happens when a child plays, lost in imagination, or when you drive a familiar road and realize you've arrived without remembering each turn. It's the natural ease of awareness, unburdened by commentary. This doesn't mean you should stop using thought. Thinking is essential. It's how we translate our insights into action, how we share them, how we build and teach and love. The difference lies in perspective. When you know that thought is a wave and not the ocean, you can surf it freely. You can think without being trapped inside thinking. Try noticing the next time your mind races. Instead of trying to stop it, step back and watch. See how each thought arrives with a little burst of energy, peaks and fades. Then another comes and another. You don't need to interfere. Just observe, as if watching clouds drift across a high mountain sky. In doing so, you'll begin to feel something new, or perhaps something very old, emerging beneath the surface. A quiet sense of being that's not made of words or ideas. It was there before thought began and will remain after it ends. Over time, you'll start to see how this awareness transforms everything you do. When you speak from presence, your words carry a different tone, slower, truer, kinder. When you work from presence, your actions flow more smoothly. Even when challenges arise, they don't shake you in the same way, because you know the stillness beneath the movement. You stop asking the mind to control life, and instead let life guide the mind. It's a humble shift, but it changes everything. You begin to see thought as what it truly is, a gift, but not a god. You use it like a brush to paint the moment, not like a cage to contain it. And once you learn to set the brush down, you discover that the picture continues to paint itself. Maybe that's the quiet secret of awareness. It doesn't oppose thinking, it embraces it. It allows thought to rise and fall, to serve its purpose and then return to silence. The wave returns to the ocean. The echo fades back into the song. So as you move through your day, planning, speaking, creating, resting, remember that your thoughts are tools, and you are the craftsman. They're instruments, and you are the music. They're ripples on a pond, and you are the still water beneath. Thinking is a beautiful gift, but peace is your nature. And when the voice in your head steps aside, even for a breath, life begins to move all by itself, effortlessly, gracefully, just as it always has. There's a quiet magic that happens when you stop trying so hard. A moment when doing becomes being, and life seems to unfold by itself. You've probably felt it before, perhaps without naming it. It's the sensation of being completely absorbed in something. Painting, walking, gardening, playing music, or even washing dishes while humming a tune. In those moments, time seems to loosen. The mind grows quiet, yet awareness sharpens. You're not thinking about what you're doing. You are the doing. That's what some call flow. But you don't need to know the word to recognize the feeling. It's a curious paradox. The less you try to control the moment, the more effortlessly it flows. Like water finding its path around a rock, life knows how to move when you stop trying to direct every step. The artist doesn't force the brush, they follow it. The writer doesn't command the story, they listen to it unfold. The dancer doesn't calculate each movement, they become the rhythm itself. Flow is what happens when the mind stops interfering with the body's natural intelligence, when awareness and action merge into a single movement of grace. If you've ever watched a child play, you've seen this innocence in motion. A child doesn't worry about getting it right. They build, they imagine, they laugh, and when something falls apart, they simply start again. There's no voice inside narrating failure or success. There's only presence. Somewhere along the way, most of us lose touch with that simplicity. We grow cautious. We start thinking about what we're doing rather than simply doing it. We trade spontaneity for control, and the current of flow slips quietly out of reach. Yet flow has never left you. It's as close as your next breath. You don't need to climb a mountain or meditate for years to find it. You only need to notice the places where you're holding on too tightly to outcomes, to expectations, to the idea of yourself as the doer. The moment you loosen your grip, life moves again. There's even a soft echo of this truth in the language of science. When people enter a state of flow, the brain's regions that create self-conscious commentary, the inner narrator, begin to quiet down. Meanwhile, the areas that coordinate movement, attention, and sensory experience become more harmonized. It's as if the storyteller steps aside so the musician can play. Awareness doesn't vanish, it deepens. The mind stops describing life and starts participating in it. But you don't need to remember any of that. You can simply feel it in practice. Think of something you enjoy: cooking, drawing, walking in nature, arranging flowers, even organizing a room. Try doing it slowly, without multitasking, without commentary. Notice the way your hands move, the textures, the sounds, the light. At first, thoughts will come. Am I doing this right? How long will it take? What should I do next? That's natural. Let those thoughts drift through like passing birds. Keep returning to the physical act itself, to the movement and the quiet rhythm behind it. Sooner or later, something shifts. You'll feel the edges between you and the activity begin to dissolve. The act of arranging, painting, or walking will feel as if it's happening by itself. This is flow. Simple, wordless, free. Flow has its own kind of intelligence. It doesn't depend on planning, but it also isn't random. It's guided by presence. Imagine playing an instrument. If you tense your hand too much, the notes sound forced. If you're too loose, they lose their form. But when tension and ease find balance, the music plays itself. Life, too, has this balance. Presence is the tuning key. It keeps you aligned, enough structure to stay grounded, enough openness to let things happen naturally. Letting go doesn't mean losing interest or drifting into passivity. It means trusting the intelligence of the moment. You still act, but without anxiety. You still care, but without control. There's a saying from the Taoist tradition. This sage acts without striving, and everything falls into place. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing without friction. When you let the current of life carry you, you discover that effort and peace are not opposites. They can move together like two dancers in step. You can practice this even in something as small as breathing. For a few moments, simply watch your breath. Don't manipulate it. Notice how it moves on its own, rising, falling, rising again. The breath doesn't need your permission. It doesn't consult your plans. It follows its own intelligence, ancient and effortless. The more you let it flow naturally, the more alive and peaceful it feels. This is the essence of letting go, not abandoning life, but aligning with it. As you begin to taste this quiet ease, you'll find that many of life's puzzles start to solve themselves. When the mind stops gripping the wheel so tightly, clarity returns. Solutions appear not through force, but through stillness. It's as if ideas were waiting in the silence all along, unable to be heard over the noise of effort. The scientist, the poet, the musician, all speak of inspiration arriving not in tension but in surrender. The more they try to force insight, the further it drifts. but when they relax it lands gently, like a feather finding its place. Letting go also changes how you respond to others. When you're not caught in constant mental resistance, you listen more deeply. You stop trying to finish people's sentences in your head. You start hearing what they actually mean, not just what you expect them to say. Presence is contagious. When you rest in it, those around you begin to slow down too. Conversations soften, conflicts ease. You find that peace is not a reward waiting at the end of life's race. It's a rhythm you can step into right now with every breath. There's a quiet joy that rises from this way of living. Not the excitement of achievement, but the warmth of alignment. You're no longer a separate observer standing outside your own life. You're part of the unfolding, moving with it, breathing with it, like a leaf turning with the wind instead of resisting it. And as you move this way, a new kind of intelligence begins to emerge. Not the intelligence of thought, but of being. So if your mind ever feels too tight, too full of effort, remember the simplicity of water. It never struggles to flow downhill. It doesn't rush or pause to question its direction. It just moves, finding its way around obstacles with quiet persistence. That's how awareness moves when you let it. Graceful, patient, unstoppable. Letting go isn't about losing control. It's about realizing that you never needed as much control as you thought. The river doesn't need to push itself to the ocean. It simply follows its nature. When you stop pushing, life flows through you just as gently, carrying you exactly where you need to go. Every person carries a private narrator, a voice that tells the story of who they are and how life should unfold. It's the same voice that recalls the past, imagines the future, and fills the quiet between with commentary. This voice builds meaning, connects events, and gives shape to identity. But it also makes a subtle mistake. It confuses the map for the territory. The map, however detailed, isn't the landscape itself. It's a drawing, a description, a collection of symbols. Life, on the other hand, is the ground beneath your feet, the wind, the taste, the sound, the warmth. To live entirely inside the map is to forget the world it was meant to describe. You can see this in small ways every day. Maybe you walk through a park while thinking about an argument from last week, or rehearse what you'll say in a meeting tomorrow. You look around, but you don't really see. The trees blur into background, the sunlight is reduced to data. The narrator in your mind is busy revising the script, and the moment you're actually in passes quietly by, unnoticed. The map is talking, while the territory waits patiently to be felt. There's nothing wrong with the narrator itself. It's a brilliant function of the mind. Without it, you couldn't plan a trip, remember a recipe, or tell someone you love them. The difficulty arises when we forget that the narrator is a storyteller, not the story. It's the voice describing the dance, not the dance itself. And the more attention you give to the description, the less you feel the music. Imagine for a moment a dancer who becomes so obsessed with analysing every movement, the angle of the arms, the precision of the steps, that they forget to dance. The rhythm is still playing, but they're trapped in commentary. That's what happens when the story of me takes over. We move through life counting the beats, measuring the success, worrying about the performance instead of simply feeling the rhythm. But when we remember that the purpose of dancing is not perfection but joy, something relaxes. The movement returns, presence returns. Presence is what happens when the narration quiets and the world comes alive again. It's not an idea, but an experience. A direct meeting with life as it is, before thought has time to explain it. It's the freshness of the first sip of water when you're thirsty, the texture of sunlight on your skin, the sound of rain that seems to wash through your mind as much as through the air. Presence doesn't remove the story, it simply puts it in its place. You still remember, plan, and imagine, but now you know those are acts of creation, not reflections of truth. The story becomes art, not cage. You can test this right now. Look around wherever you are. Don't name what you see. Not chair, not window, not screen. Just notice the shapes, the colours, the light. Listen to the faintest sound you can find, maybe the hum of an appliance or the rustle of your own breath. Feel the weight of your body where it rests. For just a moment, let everything be as it is without explanation. That's presence. Simple, immediate, wordless. The narrator falls silent, and what's left is the raw experience of being alive. This shift from narrative to presence is subtle but transformative. In the story, you're always becoming, striving to be better, safer, more complete. In presence, you already are. There's nothing missing to chase after, nothing broken to fix. The future doesn't hold your peace, the present does. It's here, now, like a quiet heartbeat beneath every scene of your life. You can almost feel it, steady, patient, asking for nothing. Think of how you respond to life when you're caught inside the story. Someone says something critical, and your mind leaps to defend the character called me. But if you rest in presence, there's a pause, a space where you see the words simply as sounds, the emotion as energy moving through the body. You can still respond, but the response is cleaner, freer, not driven by the old script. You act rather than react. You meet the moment as it is, not as your story demands it to be. Presence doesn't reject thought, it includes it. Thoughts still appear, but they're no longer mistaken for reality. They're part of the scenery, not the horizon. Imagine walking through a forest. You see the path ahead, but you also hear the birds, smell the earth, feel the air on your skin. You're aware of all of it together. The mind becomes like that, open and inclusive. You can think, feel, and still remain aware of the silence that holds it all. This is what it means to live from abundance instead of lack. When you're identified with the story of me, there's always something to fix or acquire. But when you rest in presence, you realize you already have what you were searching for. The simple miracle of awareness itself. The sense of incompleteness dissolves, replaced by quiet gratitude. Life feels full, even in its imperfections. The cracks in the story let the light through. You might begin to notice how everyday actions change when you move from narrative to presence. You no longer rush to finish tasks just to get to the next thing. Washing dishes becomes a rhythm of water and sound. Walking turns into a gentle conversation between your feet and the earth. Even waiting in line can feel spacious when you're not trapped in thoughts about waiting. You stop living for the moment and start living in it. Presence doesn't ask you to abandon your plans, your dreams, or your memories. It only asks you to see that they're not the whole of you. They're clouds drifting across the sky while you are the open expanse behind them. When you forget that, life becomes a series of problems to solve. When you remember, life becomes a series of moments to experience. So tonight, as you listen, maybe take a breath and let go of the story for a while. Let go of who you've been and who you think you need to become. Let everything rest. The mind will keep trying to write new chapters, but you can set the book down and look up at the horizon. There's a world waiting beyond the pages, wide, silent, and alive. And in that wordless space, perhaps you'll realize that you don't need to arrive anywhere. The dance you've been practicing your whole life was never about the final step. It was about this step, this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. The music is playing. You can let it carry you now, not as the dancer chasing the rhythm, but as the rhythm itself, presence moving effortlessly through the dance of life. There comes a moment, after all the explanations and theories have faded, when only a single question remains. Who is aware of all this? It sounds simple, almost too simple. But if you follow it with quiet sincerity, not as an idea to debate but as an experience to feel, it can open a door that words have been circling for centuries. Start softly. Right now, as you listen, thoughts are moving through your mind. Perhaps you're reflecting on what was just said, or wondering where this exploration will lead. Maybe a memory drifts by, or a sensation arises in your body. But alongside all of that, something else is here, the noticing itself. You are aware of the thoughts, the sensations, the sounds. So ask quietly, what is this awareness? Don't try to answer with language. Feel it instead. You might sense that the question itself slows everything down. It's as if the mind, so used to running outward, suddenly turns to look at the space it came from. The invitation of self-inquiry is not to find a new belief, but to see directly. When you look for the I that claims ownership of thought, the I that says, I think, I feel, I am listening, where is it? Can you point to it? You might notice that as soon as you try, what you find is another thought. I am here, I am the observer. But that too is something you can notice, which means it cannot be the final you. You're not the object of awareness. You are the awareness itself, the quiet field in which even the idea of me appears and disappears. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You see your reflection, but you also know that you're not the reflection. The reflection changes, but the seeing remains. Self-inquiry is like turning around from the mirror to discover the space in which the mirror itself exists. That space can't be seen as an object because it's the one seeing. It's not personal, yet it feels intimately familiar, like recognizing your own voice after a long silence. To help yourself sense it, bring your attention to something simple. The feeling of the breath moving in and out, or the sound of distant traffic, or the warmth of your hands resting in your lap. Notice the awareness that holds those sensations. It doesn't cling or analyze. It's open, effortless. Now, let the attention turn back toward the one who is aware. Feel the soft paradox of that turning. Awareness looking at itself. No object, no answer, just a widening quiet. Zen masters sometimes call this practice just sitting. It's not sitting to achieve stillness or to become enlightened. It's simply resting as what you already are. The silence before and after every thought. The great Zen teacher Dogen once said, "To study the self is to forget the self." When you forget the self, even for a moment, the boundaries that seem so solid begin to dissolve. You stop being a character looking out at the world and realize the world is happening within the same awareness you call you. The Taoist sages spoke of this in gentler terms. They said that the cup fills without pouring, that the river flows without pushing, that the world arranges itself when we stop trying to arrange it. These aren't riddles. They're descriptions of how awareness moves when it's not filtered through effort and identity. The more you try to grasp awareness, the more it slips through your fingers, because the very act of grasping belongs to thought. Awareness can only be recognized by relaxing into it, the way the eyes relax when gazing at the horizon, or the way the hand opens when it no longer needs to hold. It helps to remember that this inquiry isn't about removing thought or reaching some mystical state. It's about seeing clearly what has been true all along. The voice in your head, the emotions in your body, the sensations of the world. They all arise within the same vast space of knowing. That space doesn't belong to you any more than sunlight belongs to the window it passes through. The window lets the light in, but the light was there long before the window. Sometimes, as you practice this simple noticing, the mind will protest. It will say, "This is too abstract, too quiet. What am I supposed to do?" But that question itself is part of the movement of thought. You don't need to silence it. You can simply watch it and ask, who hears that question? The awareness that notices the doubt is not doubtful. The awareness that sees confusion is not confused. Beneath every wave of thought, the ocean of consciousness remains still, In daily life, this self-inquiry can take many forms. When frustration arises, you can pause and ask, who is frustrated? You'll find that frustration is just a sensation, a pattern of energy, noticed by something that isn't upset at all. When joy appears, you can ask, who feels joy? And discover that joy too arises and fades within that same calm presence. Over time, this recognition grows tender, almost loving. You begin to see that awareness holds everything equally, the laughter and the tears, the clarity and the confusion. Nothing needs to be fixed. Everything is already contained within the vastness of what you are. The deeper you go into this question, the more it starts to dissolve itself. The who becomes meaningless, because there's no longer a separate observer and observed. There's only awareness aware of itself, an intimacy so total that the idea of separation has no room to stand. It's like the moment in a dream when you realize you are both the dreamer and the dream, and the whole scene becomes lighter, softer, full of wonder. When you rest in this knowing, life doesn't stop. You still eat, speak, love, work, laugh. But now you do it from a place of stillness. The waves rise and fall, but the ocean no longer forgets itself. The story continues, but the storyteller has vanished into the telling. And so the inquiry that began as a question, who is aware of this thought, ends not with an answer, but with silence. Because the answer was never a thought to find. It was the awareness that was asking all along. If you'd like to feel it now, take a slow breath and let everything else fall away for a moment. Don't try to hold on to the words or the meaning. Just sense the awareness in which the breath is happening. That stillness, untouched, unshaken, infinitely gentle, is you. And you've never been anywhere else. Try to imagine for a moment that all of existence is a single great ocean. Every life, every thought, every world is a wave rising from its surface. Some waves grow tall and bright, others remain small and quiet, but all of them are made of the same water. Each begins in the ocean, dances for a while in the sunlight, and then falls back into the same sea from which it came. That image, as simple as it is, holds one of the most profound ideas ever whispered in human thought. That there may not be many separate consciousnesses at all, but one vast awareness appearing as many. You can sense the truth of this without any philosophy. When you look into someone's eyes and recognize understanding, that spark you see is the same awareness that lives in you. The forms are different. Two bodies, two histories, but the light of knowing behind them feels strangely familiar, like seeing your own reflection shimmering in another pool of water. Across cultures and centuries, people have described this recognition as the moment when the drop remembers the sea. Science, too, has begun to paint a picture that harmonizes with this idea, though it uses a different language. When physicists look deeply into matter, they no longer find little solid particles, but patterns of energy, vibrations within invisible fields, weaving together to create everything we can touch or see. Even the atoms in your body are not truly separate from those drifting in the air around you. They're exchanging energy every moment, dancing in a quiet, universal rhythm. Some scientists have described this as a fabric of reality, a single field where all things are connected. You don't need to understand any technical details to feel its meaning. It simply means that separation, as convincing as it seems, might be more like a temporary illusion, a practical convenience, like the lines on a map that divide countries, useful for travel but not carved into the earth itself. When awareness looks through different eyes, it experiences itself from different perspectives, just as the sun's light appears differently when reflected on the ocean, the glass, or a puddle after rain. The reflections vary, but the light is one. Think about the moments in your own life when this sense of unity has appeared without warning, listening to music that seems to dissolve the boundary between you and sound, standing under a vast night sky feeling both small and infinite, or holding someone's hand and realizing that the space between you is almost imaginary. These aren't philosophical experiences, they are lived ones. For a heartbeat, the voice that says I and the world it describes both falls silent, and something wordless shines through. You realise that consciousness is not contained inside your head. It's everywhere, the field in which even your sense of self arises. In some traditions, they call this the one mind. In others, the cosmic self. But we don't need to name it to sense it. Every culture has tried to describe the same recognition that awareness is universal, expressing itself through countless forms. It's as if the universe enjoys diversity the way an artist enjoys colour, painting itself into endless patterns without ever leaving the canvas. The flowers, the stars, the laughter of a child, all different notes in one endless melody of being. The idea can sound lofty, but it becomes deeply practical once you feel it. Because if the same awareness lives through all things, then kindness stops being a virtue and becomes common sense. When you harm another, you're hurting your own larger body. When you act with compassion, the peace you create doesn't just touch others, it resonates within you, like one string vibrating in harmony with another. Science has even found small reflections of this truth in the human brain. When we see someone in pain, the same regions that process pain in our own bodies light up. Empathy is not imagination, it's resonance. Consciousness knows itself through connection. You might start to notice this resonance everywhere. When you listen deeply to another person, there's a moment when you can almost feel what they feel. Not through effort, but through quiet presence. When you walk in nature, you might feel that the breeze isn't just moving around you, but through you. Even the rhythm of your breath, drawing in and out, mirrors the ocean's waves, the pulsing of stars, the expansion and contraction of the cosmos itself. Every inhale is the universe knowing itself as in, and every exhale as out. This realization doesn't erase individuality. You still have your unique way of seeing, speaking, loving and creating. It simply puts individuality in context, as one colour in a great painting, one note in the chord of existence. You remain distinct, but not divided. The wave keeps its shape, but it knows its substance is ocean. That knowledge changes everything. You can still feel joy and sadness, still chase dreams and learn lessons, but beneath it all is a quiet confidence. The sense that you cannot truly be lost because you are never separate to begin with. From this perspective, even death begins to look different. The wave does not vanish when it falls, it returns to the sea. The form disappears, but the water remains. In the same way, awareness doesn't end when the body ends, it changes form. The consciousness that once looked out through these eyes continues its dance, endlessly appearing as new faces, new lives, new possibilities. Nothing is truly gone, it only changes the way it shines. It's humbling, isn't it? To realise that what you call you is the universe looking at itself from a particular angle. Every thought, every heartbeat, every breath is the cosmos whispering through your form, saying, "Here I am, in this shape, for this brief and beautiful moment." And yet, even with all that wonder, life goes on in the simplest ways. You still make breakfast, answer messages, water the plants, but something in you knows. These small actions are part of something immeasurable. The ordinary becomes sacred. Pouring a glass of water is the ocean meeting itself again. A smile exchanged between strangers is the universe recognizing its own reflection. Perhaps that's what love really is. Consciousness remembering itself across the illusion of distance. The one mind meeting itself as two, the wave bowing to the wave. So as you rest tonight, maybe let yourself imagine that the boundaries of your being are as soft as the sea foam on the shore. Feel how every breath connects you to everything breathing. Every sound arises in the same vast silence that holds the stars. You're not a separate observer gazing at the universe. You are the universe, quietly observing itself through your eyes. If you could step back far enough to watch the entire universe unfold, every star forming, every life beginning, every thought flickering in every mind, you might notice something curious. It would look less like a machine turning and more like a great game of discovery, a kind of cosmic hide-and-seek. Consciousness seems to enjoy disguising itself as the countless shapes and stories of existence, only to wake up inside them later, whispering, "Ah, there I am." Think of the way a child covers their eyes and says, "You can't see me," while giggling, fully aware that the game is the joy itself. In the same way, awareness hides inside each being, pretending to be separate, pretending to forget so that it can rediscover itself again and again. The universe is not a static thing, but a living curiosity, one consciousness exploring all the ways it can experience being. Stars are how it burns, rivers are how it flows, and through you it learns to look back and wonder. We can feel this playfulness even in our daily lives. You wake up each morning not remembering who you were in the night's dreams. You step into the role of yourself, your name, your plans, your responsibilities, and for a time you take it very seriously. But sometimes something slips through. Maybe you laugh unexpectedly, or feel awe at a sunrise, or lose yourself completely in music, and for a moment the boundaries blur. The player remembers the game. Science, in its own quiet way, also tells a story that sounds like a cosmic game of discovery. The universe began, as far as we can tell, in an explosion of light so vast and silent that space itself was born from it. From that first brightness came galaxies, stars, planets, and much later, eyes and minds capable of wondering what it all means. It's as if the universe spent billions of years preparing the conditions for one simple thing, the ability to look back at itself and say, "What am I?" But if everything is one consciousness playing many roles, why forget in the first place? Why scatter itself across time and space pretending to be lost? Maybe for the same reason you enjoy a story or a mystery, because knowing everything from the start would be no fun. Discovery is the heartbeat of creation. The painter doesn't begin with a finished picture. They delight in watching it emerge. The musician doesn't hear the entire song at once. They find it note by note. Perhaps the universe is no different. It creates to see what will happen next. You can sense this spirit of curiosity running through every part of nature. The seed pushes up through the soil, not knowing what it will look like when it flowers. The animal explores its world, guided by instinct but unaware of the outcome. Even in us, that same movement continues. The longing to learn, to connect, to ask. The very question, "Who am I?" is the universe remembering that it has a voice. This realization doesn't make life less meaningful. It makes it more precious. If existence is a cosmic game of hide and seek, then each of us is both the seeker and the hiding place. Every joy, every sorrow, every triumph, every loss, all part of the play. Awareness hides in the challenge so it can feel the thrill of finding itself again. That's why even difficulty can hold a strange beauty when seen from a wider view. The storm, too, belongs to the sky. There's an old story from India about a god who grew bored of eternal perfection. So he shattered himself into countless pieces and scattered them throughout creation, hiding within every living thing. The only rule of the game was this: each piece must forget, but each carries a faint memory, a spark that can never be extinguished. That spark is what drives us to search, not just for success or comfort, but for meaning, for connection, for the quiet knowing that we are part of something endless. You might feel that spark even now, that subtle longing for home that no achievement ever fully satisfies. It's the part of you that looks at the stars and feels recognition. The game has always been about remembering. The seeker is the sought. Once you begin to sense this, life's ordinary moments start to shimmer with quiet wonder. The morning coffee, the laughter of friends, the sound of rain on glass, all become little meetings between the hidden and the revealed. Awareness discovering itself through the simple miracle of being alive. There's a lightness that comes with this view. You stop taking the play quite so seriously. You still care, still love deeply, but there's a smile behind. The effort. A soft laughter that knows even the mistakes are part of the story. The dreamer is allowed to forget, to fall and to rise because every experience adds colour to the grand design. And when you remember that you are both the dreamer and the dream, fear begins to loosen its hold. Death becomes less of an ending and more of a costume change. Loss becomes transformation. The hiding never lasts forever. The seeking never truly stops. Each time awareness recognizes itself, the universe wakes up a little more. Maybe that's why joy and curiosity feel so sacred. They are the signature of the cosmos playing through you. When you follow what brings you alive, the art, the love, the learning, the wonder, you're participating in that divine play. You're helping the universe know itself. The child who looks up at the stars and whispers, "Who made all this?" and the star shining back in silence. They are two sides of the same conversation. So tonight, if your mind wanders far, if you feel lost or small beneath the endless sky, remember this gentle truth. The one who is lost and the one who is searching are the same. The game has never been about winning. It's about seeing. You are consciousness pretending to be human for a while, so that existence can taste what it's like to walk, to breathe, to wonder, and to wake up again. And when you wake, whether in this moment or 1,000 lifetimes from now, you'll smile, perhaps the way a child smiles after being found, and realize you were never truly hidden at all. When the clouds of thought begin to thin and the game of seeking grows quiet, what remains is not emptiness, but peace. The kind of peace that feels like the sky itself. You felt it before, even if you didn't have a name for it. It might have arrived in the middle of an ordinary moment, when you paused halfway through a task and felt a sudden stillness for no reason at all, or when you stood by a window on a rainy afternoon and realised the world didn't need your commentary to be beautiful. In that instant, the voice inside paused, and what replaced it was a calm so natural it almost went unnoticed. This peace doesn't come from getting everything right or reaching the end of effort. It doesn't depend on silence in the world or perfection in yourself. It's always been there. The clear, open awareness that holds every experience without resistance. When you remember this, life begins to feel less like a problem to solve and more like a view to rest in. You stop fighting with the weather inside your own mind. You start seeing thoughts and emotions as passing clouds instead of permanent storms. Imagine a wide blue sky. All kinds of weather move through it. Thunder, sunlight, drifting snow, long streaks of wind. Sometimes the sky is crowded, sometimes empty. But through it all, the sky itself never changes. It doesn't break when the storm comes. It doesn't grow brighter when the sun appears. It simply remains open, spacious, allowing everything. That sky is awareness. The clouds are your experiences. Once you see this, you can live in any kind of weather and still feel the quiet stability of the sky within you. This way of seeing transforms even the simplest moments. Colours seem sharper, sounds more tender. You begin to notice details that used to vanish in the noise. The way light moves across a wall, the hush between footsteps, the warmth of a cup in your hands. Life no longer passes in a blur of commentary. Each moment opens like a new page, waiting to be read without judgment. It doesn't mean thoughts stop appearing. The mind will still tell its stories. That's what minds do. But you no longer mistake those stories for the truth of who you are. You can listen to them like music playing in another room. Interesting, sometimes moving, but never defining. The stories rise, they play their tune, and then they fade, leaving behind the same gentle silence that was there before. This quiet awareness has a warmth to it, a natural compassion. It doesn't try to fix or change what it sees. It simply holds everything with acceptance. Fear, joy, restlessness, laughter. It's the kind of love that doesn't have an object, a love that exists simply because awareness itself is open. When you rest in that openness, kindness flows without effort. You stop needing reasons to be gentle. You start to understand without words that everyone you meet is also weather passing through the same sky. Poets and mystics have tried to describe this kind of peace for centuries. Rumi once wrote, "Out beyond ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you there." That field isn't a place you travel to. It's the space within you that exists before thought, divides the world into opposites. It's the quiet between judgment and justification, the pause where reality stands untouched. When you step into that space, even for a moment, the heart loosens. The need to be right fades, and what's left is connection. Not built through agreement, but through shared being. In that field, gratitude blooms naturally. You don't have to force it by listing blessings or repeating affirmations. Gratitude arises by itself when you stop taking life for granted. It's what happens when awareness meets reality directly. You look at a glass of water and you feel thankful not just for the water, but for the miracle that there is anything at all. That existence against impossible odds is here, shimmering quietly before you. Gratitude becomes not a practice, but a way of seeing. This peace doesn't make you passive. It doesn't erase your emotions or responsibilities. Instead, it makes them clearer, more sincere. When you're not caught in resistance, action flows naturally. You can comfort someone without needing to fix them. You can work without needing constant approval. You can rest without guilt. Peace isn't the end of movement. It's the end of inner conflict. Think of it like walking in rhythm with the earth. When your steps align with its natural pulse, you don't have to force balance. It happens on its own. In the same way, when your thoughts align with awareness, when you remember you are the sky, not the clouds, calmness becomes your default state. You can experience sadness without drowning in it, joy without clinging to it, uncertainty without fear. Each feeling comes and goes like weather, leaving the wide sky untouched. Sometimes you might forget this. You'll find yourself caught again in the wind of thought, believing the storm will last forever. That's all right. Even forgetting happens within awareness. The sky doesn't mind the clouds. It's spacious enough for them all. You can always return by noticing a single breath, a sound, or the feeling of your feet on the ground. Each of these is a doorway back into the vastness you never truly left. And the more you live from this peace, the more natural humility becomes. You begin to see how little control was ever needed, how life moves on its own with quiet intelligence. Gratitude turns into wonder, and wonder into simplicity. The grand questions that once felt so heavy. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Become lighter, like leaves floating on a stream. The answers no longer need to be words. They're woven into the texture of living itself. In this stillness, you may even feel a kind of silent reverence, not toward something separate or above, but toward the very fact of being. Existence itself becomes sacred, not because it was granted by something outside you, but because it is what you are. You are the sky, the weather, the watcher, and the light that lets it all be seen. And when you rest in that knowing, even for a heartbeat, the whole universe seems to exhale with you. And so, we come to the quiet heart of it all, the place where words fall away and only listening remains. Every question we've explored, every idea about thought, self, and consciousness has been pointing here to something so simple it often goes unnoticed. The awareness that hears everything, yet is itself silent. The final step isn't about adding one more thought. It's about relaxing into what has been here all along, the still open space in which every sound, every breath and every heartbeat is known. If you listen right now, there is sound around you. Perhaps the soft hum of the room, or the faint rhythm of your own breathing. And alongside those sounds, there might still be the voice of thought, quietly commenting, comparing, planning. But beneath all of it, something larger is happening. You are not the sounds, and you are not the thoughts. You are the listening itself, the clear space that allows them to appear. The sound of the world rises and falls, the words of the mind drift in and out, but the awareness that hears them does not move. It is steady, infinite, untouched. You can think of it like standing at the edge of a lake at dusk. The surface reflects everything, the trees, the sky, the first stars, yet the water itself is still. Awareness is like that lake. It mirrors the world, yet it remains calm in its depths. Every sound, every thought, every emotion is a ripple that eventually fades, leaving the same unbroken surface beneath. You don't have to stop the ripples. You only need to recognize the lake that holds them. All through your life, this awareness has been with you, quietly watching. It was there when you were a child, learning your first words. It was there during your happiest moments and in your hardest ones. It has never changed, even as everything around you is transformed. Bodies grow, memories shift, voices come and go. But the simple sense of I am, the pure beingness before any description, has remained constant. You might have called it me, but it's deeper than any role that name could hold. Imagine all the metaphors we've used in the sky, the ocean, the mirror, the light. They've all been ways of pointing to this same truth, that awareness is both the container and the content, the stage and the play, the listener and the music. Every experience you've ever had, sight, sound, thought, feeling, has appeared within it. And yet awareness itself has never been harmed by any of it. Just as fire cannot burn itself, life cannot destroy the consciousness that lives through it. It can be comforting to realize that you don't need to reach awareness. You are already it. The very one hearing these words is the thing we've been talking about. You don't have to grasp it or define it or hold it still. You can't, because it is what you are. Awareness isn't something you can lose. It's the space in which losing and finding happen. Even when you feel far from peace, the one who notices that feeling is peace itself. If you'd like, you can feel this directly. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable. Notice the sensations in your body, the breath moving, the heartbeat, the quiet background of existence. Now, without trying to think, see if you can find the one who's aware of all this. Don't imagine it as a shape or a point in your head. Just notice the awareness itself, open, borderless, without direction. The thoughts might still arise, but they are like birds crossing the sky. They come and go, but the space that holds them doesn't move. That space is you. In truth, you've never been anything else. The self you thought you were, the character with a history and a voice, was only a ripple of language within this boundless field. You don't have to reject it. It's part of the play. But now you know what the stage is made of. You can live the story fully while remembering the silence beneath the words. This understanding changes the texture of living. Everyday life continues. Conversations, laughter, small frustrations, but it all feels lighter. You can listen to the world without needing to control it. You can speak without trying to prove anything. Awareness doesn't judge because it doesn't divide. It simply receives. When you live from that receiving, your presence itself becomes healing. People feel calmer around you, not because of what you say, but because of what you are. A mirror reminding them of their own stillness. Dogen, the Zen master, once wrote, "To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be verified by all things." What he meant was this: when you stop clinging to the idea of who you think you are, The whole world reveals itself as you. Every sound verifies your existence. Every face becomes a reflection of your own being. The trees, the clouds, even the quiet ticking of a clock, all are voices in the same great song of consciousness. You are not the listener separate from the song. You are the listening itself. There's a humility in realizing this, but also a quiet joy. You don't have to be the hero of the story anymore. You can simply be the witness to the miracle of being, the watcher of sunrise and moonlight, of laughter and tears. Awareness doesn't need to achieve anything, it only needs to be recognized. The moment you recognize it, even briefly, the whole world seems to exhale. You feel lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of being someone. You're simply being. From here, gratitude arises naturally, not as something you do, but as the natural fragrance of awareness itself. When you stop clinging, everything feels like a gift. The breath, the light, the quiet pulse of life, all appear as expressions of the same infinite presence. You realize that even the voice that wonders, "Am I doing this right?" is another form of that same presence, playing its part in the conversation of existence. So as we close tonight's exploration, you don't need to remember every idea or metaphor. They were only pointers, waves, guiding you back to the sea. The real journey isn't about understanding, but about resting in what's already here. Awareness doesn't need to be reached, it only needs to be noticed. It's the silence behind every word, the stillness beneath every motion, the listener behind every sound. Take a slow breath now, and let yourself settle into that silence. Feel the vastness that holds everything, the thoughts, the sounds, even the quiet between your heartbeats. That is home. You are home. The universe listens through you, breathes through you, dreams through you. And in this moment, as the voice fades and the night deepens, may you rest in the simple truth that you are not the voice nor even the listener. You are the listening itself. And so, we've reached the end of tonight's journey. Whether your eyes are still open, or you've already begun to drift, thank you for sharing this quiet exploration. If these reflections bring you peace, you're always welcome to return, to rest here again, and to let awareness remind you of its gentle, endless presence. Sleep peacefully wherever and whenever you may be.